Dustwell wasn't a town so much as a memory clinging to the edge of the canyon. The wind carried grit instead of songs, and its wooden buildings sagged like old men who had seen too much and stood for too long. A single crooked sign above the boarded saloon read "Welcome" in letters half-scorched by a fire no one talked about anymore. It was market day, but you wouldn't know it. Only 5 stalls stood in the square, their owners watchful and silent, glancing west every few minutes, as if shadows might ride in from the canyons at any time. The hollow riders hadn't come through in over a month, long enough to breathe, but not long enough to stop sleeping with one eye open. They were ghosts on horses, the townsfolk said, riders who didn't cast shadows, who came for blood, coin, or worse. A gust of wind kicked up a cloud of dust and tore a worn scarf from a passerby's face. That's when she appeared, half girl, half ghost herself, thin as a rail, barefoot, face half covered in matted hair and the rest in dirt. Her dress was torn flour sackcloth, the kind used to wrap potatoes in winter. Her ribs pressed visibly against her skin as she crept toward the bread stall. Old Mervis, the vendor, had just turned to spit when her hand darted forward. One loaf, small, stale, clutched to her chest like treasure. "She's thieving," someone shouted. The market came alive with noise. Boots thundered. Mervis turned, roared, and lunged. She tried to run but didn't make it 2 steps. 3 men tackled her, grinding her into the ground as if she'd murdered a child. One yanked the bread from her hand and threw it to the dirt. Another grabbed her hair and lifted her head for the crowd to see. "Anyone recognize her?" he sneered. No one answered, but they stared. She didn't scream, just gasped through cracked lips, too weak to fight back. Blood ran from her elbow where the rocks had bitten. Her face was swollen. Still, she tried to reach for the bread again. That's when O.L. Jasper moved. He sat hunched in his mule cart, hands resting on the reins, hat pulled low. Most folks figured he'd gone soft in the head after the fire that took his ranch, and his girl with it. They let him be, talked about him like a ghost that hadn't finished haunting yet. But now he stepped down. His boots hit the dirt slow, deliberate. His eyes, milky with cataract, locked on the girl. "What you want, Jasper?" someone muttered. He said nothing, just limped over, each step carried by an old ache. When he reached her, the men stepped back, not out of respect, more confusion. Jasper kneeled, took off his duster coat, and draped it around her shoulders. She flinched at his touch. "You ain't got to fear me," he said, voice low as dry thunder. Then, without asking, without checking for permission, he lifted her like a child, her body limp in his arms. Dust clung to her hair. A trickle of blood ran from the corner of her mouth. Someone snorted in disgust. Another spat in the dirt. "Don't feed her, Jasper," a woman called. "You don't know what she is." He didn't answer, just kept walking, mule cart creaking behind him, while the town watched in silence. Back at his cabin, set on the edge of the scrubland, Jasper moved slow. He laid her on the cot by the fire, lit the stove, and began boiling water. The cabin smelled of cedar smoke and old leather. He didn't speak much, not right away. He just cleaned her hands, careful with every cracked nail and cut. She winced, but didn't pull away. The stew took time. Dried beans, a scrap of salted beef, and carrots from the patch he'd stubbornly kept alive. He set the bowl in front of her and waited. She stared like she didn't understand. Her hands trembled as she lifted the spoon. The first bite nearly broke her. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she chewed, and for a moment she tried to eat too fast, then stopped, ashamed, and forced herself to slow. He sat across from her, arms crossed. "Ain't no crime, being hungry," he said. She nodded, not trusting her voice. That night, she slept on the cot, curled beneath the duster. Jasper sat by the fire, oil lamp flickering in the draft. He watched her, silent as smoke. In sleep, she twitched, whimpered, dreams filled with fear. He saw his daughter in that face. Same slope of the cheek, same sunburst of freckles across the nose. But this girl had a mark, ink just above her wrist. He leaned in, gently lifting her arm to the light. A faded tattoo, a military insignia, once used by the border regiments during the war with the tribal clans down south. He set her hand down slowly. His jaw clenched. Next morning, Town came knocking. 3 men stood outside his gate, rifles across their chests. "Jasper," one called. "We got to talk." He opened the door, but didn't step out. "She's still here." Jasper nodded. "She's got the mark. That's Soldier Ink. Some say the Hollow Riders brand their spies that way. We think you got trouble under your roof." Jasper looked at them, long and hard. "You got proof?" One man shook his head. "No, but they'll come for her. And if they think we're harboring her, then don't," Jasper said flatly. "Leave her to me." "You'd risk Dustwell for a thief in rags." "I'd risk it for someone the world's already kicked too many times." They left uneasy. Inside, she stood by the window, wrapped in the duster. "You heard." She nodded. "They're not wrong." He waited. "I was with the Riders. Not like them, I didn't kill. But I ran with them for a while. For food. Shelter. I didn't know how far they'd go until it was too late." He sat down. "I tried to leave. They said I'd starve. They weren't wrong." "You were a soldier?" "My brother was. He died. I took his badge. Said it kept me safe. I was wrong about that, too." Jasper stared into the fire. "Your name?" She hesitated. "Ella." The wind howled outside, sharp as razors. Jasper stood, walked to the back of the cabin. When he returned, he held a small pistol. He placed it on the table between them. "You know how to use it?" "Yes. You may need to." Far out in the canyons, beneath the red shadows of Devil's Spine Ridge, a rider returned to camp and knelt before his leader. "She's alive." Took shelter with the old man. The leader smiled, pulling his bandana down to reveal a scarred jaw and a missing tooth. "He don't recognize her." "No, sir. Treated her like a lost pup." The leader turned, spitting into the dust. "Good. Then let the past walk right up to his door. Let it knock." Wind came first, not the soft kind that carried dust lazily down Main Street, but the hard, bitter kind that screamed through the shutters and rapped angry knuckles on every window in Dustwell. With it came word the Hollow Riders were coming back. No one knew how soon, just that they were close. Far too close. Inside the barn, Jasper knelt on splintered boards, fingers prying open a long-forgotten hatch beneath a feed barrel. The wood groaned like it hadn't been touched in years. Beneath it lay a bundle wrapped in oiled cloth and silence. He pulled it free, unwrapped the layers with reverence. A long rifle, steel-pitted with time but still strong, still true. Beside it, in a small leather pouch, lay a tin star dulled by ash and years. He held it in his palm like a relic, thumb tracing the edges. Behind him, footsteps. Light. Bare. "Ella, you were a lawman?" she asked. He didn't look back. "Once," he said. "Then justice quit this town, and I quit with it." They stood in silence a moment, both watching dust swirl through the slats. "My brother wore one of those," she murmured. Jasper turned. "That mark on your wrist, Soldier's Ink." Ella nodded, jaw clenched. "My name's Ella. I was 15 when they killed him. The Riders. Took our camp. He died buying me time to run. I didn't make it far. They caught me. Took me in." Jasper waited. "I thought maybe I'd be safe if I stayed quiet. If I cooked. Washed clothes. But they taught me how to ride. How to scout. Said if I learned, I'd eat. I never thought they'd." Her voice broke. "I didn't know what they'd do. I never pulled a trigger. But I watched. That's worse." He stepped forward, looked her in the eye. "You fed evil to survive. Now you're starving to make it right." He handed her the rifle. "That's justice knocking." At first, she hesitated. Then, with trembling hands, she took it. Jasper walked her through the weapon like a preacher opening scripture. How to load. How to aim. How to breathe with the wind. They practiced out by the dry creek bed. Tin cans on fence posts. Ella missed the first 3. Then she adjusted her grip. The 4th shot split a can clean in 2. Jasper blinked. "Who taught you that?" She exhaled. "My brother. He was Army. Could shoot a pine cone off a fence post from 100 paces." They trained until the sky bruised purple and the moon began its silent rise. Every shot told a story of guilt, of loss, of something sharpening inside her. As the days passed, the town's cowardice became clear. Doors stayed locked. No one offered help. Not even a word. Dustwell had grown used to hiding, used to surviving by staying small. Jasper hammered boards over windows, dug shallow trenches near the church. Ella hung bells on wire trip lines, set nails and boards beneath scattered hay. They worked in silence, breath sinking, grief becoming motion. That night, by the fire, Ella stared into the flames, eyes rimmed red. "You should have left me in the dirt," she whispered. Jasper sipped his coffee, slow. "Girl, I didn't feed your belly. I fed your soul. And now it's your turn to feed them, lead." She didn't smile. But she didn't cry either. When morning came, it didn't come softly. The sky turned a strange shade of brass. Dust spiraled into the streets, whipped against walls and faces. Horses neighed in fear. The wind howled with purpose, as if warning the town of what followed. 12 of them rode in, black horses foaming at the mouth, each rider clad in long coats and silence. Skull emblems stitched into the leather like trophies. The hollow riders. They didn't rush. They never did. Power didn't have to. Jasper stood in the middle of the street, wide stance, rifle in hand. His duster flapped in the wind, hat pulled low. Beside him stood Ella, eyes steady, cheeks streaked with grit. She looked younger and older all at once. The lead rider dismounted first. Tall, wide-shouldered, with a limp in his left leg. He pulled off his hat. Jasper's jaw tensed. "Sam," he said flatly. The outlaw smiled. "Didn't think you'd remember me, old man." Jasper cocked his head. "You were my deputy, back before you grew teeth." Sam looked to Ella. "You gonna protect her? After everything she did?" "She didn't kill," Jasper said. "She ran with us. That's the same." "No," Jasper said, spitting into the dust. "She's better." Sam's smile faltered. The other riders shifted in their saddles, hands near holsters. The wind howled again. "You're making a mistake," Sam warned. Jasper raised the rifle to his shoulder. "I've made bigger." Beside him, Ella raised hers, sight steady. Her hands didn't tremble. A bell clanged faintly down the alley behind the blacksmith shop. A trap sprung. One of the riders turned, too late. Jasper fired first. The shot cracked through the morning haze, clean and sharp, striking the gun from Sam's hand and tearing a hole through his palm. He howled, stumbling back, blood blooming dark across his sleeve. For a moment, there was silence, the stunned kind that lives just before violence explodes. Then all hell broke loose. Riders drew iron. Smoke curled from muzzles. Horses reared, screaming. Bullets shattered windows, bit into wood, ripped into air and flesh alike. Jasper ducked behind a trough, reloading with steady fingers, heart hammering like war drums. The street lit up with thunder and smoke. From above, Ella moved like a whisper. She climbed the livery stable's awning, boots silent on weathered boards. Her rifle cracked once. One rider fell, slumped against his saddle before hitting the dust. Another turned, looking for the shooter. Too late. Another shot. He dropped, eyes still open. Jasper took a slug to the thigh, sharp, searing pain, but he stayed upright, leaning against a wagon wheel, still firing. His voice cut through the chaos. "Move. Behind the well. You got a clear shot from there." A father dragging his boy from the street stopped. "Look back." Heard Jasper's voice again. "Dustwell ain't dying today. Not while we still got hands to fight." He let go of his fear. Picked up the dropped rifle by the general store. Fired. Missed. Fired again. Hit. Others began to follow. A woman with her apron still on, eyes red from smoke, threw open her window and dropped a lantern on a rider's back. The flames caught his coat. He screamed as he rolled into the dirt, trying to snuff it out. One of the stable hands ran from the shadows, shoved a pitchfork through the struggling man's chest. The town was waking. By the blacksmith's forge, Ella dropped another rider. Then another. Her aim was clean, quiet, unforgiving. But one caught her flank with a ricochet. The bullet grazed her ribs. She hissed through clenched teeth, but stayed standing. Then came the fire. A bullet hit the lamp above the saloon doors. Oil sprayed. Flames caught the curtains, the roof, the walls. In moments, the building became a torch. Jasper didn't see it until it was too late. He chased Sam into the saloon, limping, blood pouring from his leg. Inside, the world burned orange and gold. Smoke hung thick, stinging his eyes. Sam stood at the back, pistol drawn, hand wrapped in a torn cloth. Shadows danced across his face. "You were like a son," Jasper said, breath ragged. "I taught you the badge was meant for justice." Sam smiled bitter. "And you were weak. This town needed wolves. So I gave them one." Flames roared louder. They stared across the firelit room, both knowing there'd be no walking out untouched. Jasper raised his revolver. Sam lifted his. 2 shots fired as one. Jasper collapsed backward, his shoulder torn open. Sam stumbled, blood pouring from his chest. He gasped once, then fell, face first into the ashes of the past. Outside, Ella dropped to the alleyway, gripping her side. The last rider circled, his face hidden beneath a dark bandana. He dismounted, approached slowly. His voice came low and warm, familiar. "Ella." She froze. He pulled the cloth from his face. Eyes she once kissed. A mouth that once promised to keep her warm, safe, fed. "Caleb, you don't have to stay here," he said, gun at his side. "We can go. Just you and me. We were good once. You know it." She shook her head, trembling. "We were desperate. There's a difference. I kept you alive. You caged me." He stepped closer. "You're no hero, Ella. You think these people would have given you a crumb if you didn't have a rifle in your hand." "I'm not a hero," she said, voice steadying. "But I'm not who I was." She lowered her gun for a second. Just a second. Caleb's fingers twitched. She raised it again and fired. He staggered, eyes wide in disbelief, and collapsed beside the broken crates behind the tailor's shop. A pool of blood spread into the dust. "I don't steal bread anymore," she whispered. By nightfall, the flames were out. Bodies were buried. The saloon was a smoldering skeleton. Jasper lay on the cot, eyes half shut, skin pale but breathing steady. Ella wiped the sweat from his brow, her hand stained with ash and blood. "You're too damn stubborn to die," she said. His lips curled slightly. "Ain't the first time I've been told that." "You lost a lot of blood." "I've lost worse," he muttered. "But I gained something today." Outside, laughter rose, soft, cautious, like a town relearning the sound. Lanterns hung from porches again. Windows opened. The silence that had gripped Dust Well for so long began to loosen. The next morning, someone nailed a new sheriff's star to the post outside Jasper's cabin. Not shiny, not new, just honest. Ella stood in clean clothes beneath the cottonwood tree, her hair tied back, hand steady as she ladled stew into bowls for a group of dusty children with empty bellies and wide eyes. She smiled gently, handing each one a portion. A boy with freckles looked up at her. "Miss, is it true you used to be bad?" She knelt beside him, wiped a bit of stew from his chin. "Maybe," she said, "but people change." As he ran off, bowl in hand, she looked up at the sunrise breaking across the canyons. Warm light bathed the rooftops. Jasper sat on the porch behind her, wrapped in a blanket, sipping coffee. She looked back at him. "You think they'll remember?" He nodded. "They'll remember." The wind carried the scent of stew and smoke, but also hope, something forgotten but not lost. And as the screen of memory pulled back like the curtain on an old photograph, a voice echoed through time. "They say she once wore rags, and he once wore a badge, but in a town that had forgotten mercy. They remembered what it meant to feed the hungry,